Space, the ultimate boundary. These are the expeditions of the starship Acadia. Its 8-year objective: to investigate unfamiliar planets, to discover novel life and civilizations, and to fearlessly venture into uncharted territories. Starfleet universe, and here we mean universe in the sense of a setting rather than the physical plane of existence, is the Milky Way galaxy, and the timeline of the game covers a period of about 130 Earth years. Now, the Milky Way is divided into 24 sectors, each named with a Greek letter, and each of these sectors is arranged in a radial pattern extending from the center of the galaxy, where star density and radiation prohibit travel, out to the galactic rim. Now, the galactic center is divided into 3 zones. There's a storm zone, which is uninhabitable due to galactic storms, a radiation zone, which is hostile to life, and finally the core of the galaxy, which remains largely unexplored even by probes. The 24 sectors are grouped to form regions called octants. And there are 5 habitable octants, including the Alpha Octant, the Sargasso Octant, the Zarkalian Empire, the Sigma Octant, and the Omega Octant. And interspersed with these habitable sectors are 5 void sectors. These include Epsilon, Iota, Pi, Upsilon, and Omega. Few solar systems, intense ion storms, and dangerous radiation clouds, the void sectors, subdivide the galaxy, making travel between the inhabited sectors rather difficult. Now, most of the action in the Starfleet universe occurs in the Alpha Octant, and the Alpha is composed of 4 sectors: Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta, although only Alpha, Beta, and Gamma have been explored in any great detail. And the great powers of the Alpha Octant include the United Federation of Planets, the Klingon Empire, and the Romulan Star Empire. Besides these, there's also a number of smaller kingdoms and confederations. Separated from the Alpha sector by a large void is the Omega Octant. And this octant includes the Psi, Chi, and Phi sectors. And the history of the Omega Octant is really turbulent, with several dozen empires vying for regional control. These include the Mazeron Alliance, which is a multi-special empire that's gone through a process of rising, falling, and rising again. Also the silicon-based Trobran Empire, which is bent on dominating the inferior carbonite life forms. The Prober Revolution, a group of bioengineered salamanders bent on spreading anarchy. The Drex Unity, which is a technology-centered civilization based off of artificial intelligence. The Sigvirian Expansion, a civilization of sentient viruses who use other species as their host. And the Republic of Aurora, a group of exiles from the Alpha Octant who have been forced to survive in the chaos of the Omega Zones. The greatest intergalactic threats come from invaders from the Andromedan galaxy. They were first encountered in the year 166 and attempted an invasion of the Milky Way in 188. And they've mastered technologies unfamiliar to galactic forces, such as power absorbers that not only shield their craft, but absorb the power of attacks to make their ships more dangerous. Offensively, they use tractor repulsor beams that are capable of tearing opponents' ships apart. There's also an inhabitable region in the Lesser Magellanic Clouds, and the main powers in this area are the Baduve Imperium, the Inine Protectorates, and the Majadim Hives. And several wars were waged between these factions for control of the densely populated core of the region. Now, when the Andromedans arrived, they attempted to conquer the area as a forward base for their conquest of the Milky Way. And the 3 Magellanic factions were forced to ally themselves and fight off the invaders. In a devastating campaign in which the Triple Pact was nearly wiped out, they eventually forced the Andromedans out of the clouds and were able to rebuild their shattered empire. Also adjacent to the Omega Octant of the Milky Way galaxy is the Iridani Cluster, and it's home to an adventurous spacefaring race of otters who are bent on performing noble quests throughout the galaxy. And while the Andromedans were able to conquer them in the 190s, there were so many Iridani questers in the Milky Way and Magellanic Clouds that they were able to band together an armada and retake their homeworlds. Now, Scenario 2 teaches 3 things: how shields work, including how they're damaged, how photon torpedoes are fired, and finally how seeking weapons move and follow their targets. Now, let's talk first about shields. Shields are the primary defense of starships in this game, and they protect them by absorbing damage. And while shields need energy to function, during this scenario, your chief engineer will manage the energy that's needed to operate your shields. Now each ship is surrounded by 6 shields, numbering 1 through 6, with each facing each of the 6 surrounding hexes. Then the shields are fixed in position and can't be rotated or moved. They're represented on the SSDs by these rectangular groups of boxes surrounding the ship and marked shield number 1, 2, etc. And each damage point on a shield checks off 1 box. Now, when all boxes on a given shield are checked off, the shield's considered down. And further damage points scored on a shield that is down penetrate to the interior of the ship, and they destroy systems. These hits are called internal hits or internal damage. And note that damage scored on or which penetrate through one shield will have no effect on any other shields. Now, during Scenario 2, the drones fired on your ship will explode when they hit your ship. That is, they enter the same hex that your ship is in, and these cause 6 damage points. On the SSD for the Federation Cadet Cruiser Constellation, the number 1 shield has 16 boxes, so it will still have 4 boxes left if it was to be hit by 2 drones. The number 2 shield has 12 boxes, and while 2 drone hits, those are impacts, not damage points, would knock the shield down, they wouldn't damage the ship. Now, Shield 3 has only 10 boxes, so a second drone impact there would score internal damage on the ship. Now, if the number 2 shield is down and a drone is approaching from that direction, or for whatever reason you can't stop the drone, one option would be to turn the ship and allow the drone to hit another shield. And one of the more difficult choices in combat is to allow something to hit one of your shields when you could prevent it, perhaps by using a phaser on the drone, because you'd rather use that phaser on a more important target. Now, in the case of seeking weapons, the shield hit would be the shield facing the hex that the weapon approached from. And always remember in the sequence of play that ships move first and then seeking weapons. So, for example, the Constellation is in hex 0708, facing A, and a drone is in hex 0806, facing E, and the Constellation moves next into hex 0707, then the drone would move on the same impulse into hex 0707 and strike the ship. Now, the drone would then strike the number 2 shield, which is the one facing the hex that the drone came from. And if shield number 2 was down, the Constellation would take 6 points of internal damage. Now, let's say that other ships' shields had less damage than 6. We could avoid the internal damage through a different maneuver. So let's go back to the beginning, and we start the Constellation in hex 0708. And instead of going straight, the Constellation turns right and moves into hex 0807, in which case the drone now goes into 0807 and strikes shield 6. And if shield 6 hadn't taken any previous damage, it could still absorb those 6 points of damage. Now, for the purposes of Scenario 2, 3, and 4, the player of the target ship can mark internal damage on any system with the provision that each drone or group of drones that strikes the same shield on the same impulse or volley from a direct fire weapon in later scenarios, and which scores internal damage, must destroy 1 weapon. So remember that, they have to destroy 1 weapon. And this can be any weapon, a phaser, a photon, a disruptor, a drone rack, or a plasma torpedo on the ship, including one that's already been fired that turn. And the other 5 damage points, or fewer if some of them were used to destroy shield boxes, can be scored on other systems, possibly including weapons. And these include the excess damage boxes, which are on the SSD outside the ship's outline. Now, note that destroyed systems can no longer be used, and certain systems can't be destroyed. And those include the 4 boxes labeled drone rack on the Klingon SSD, shields other than the 1 shield that was hit by the volley, the bridge, and finally security boxes. And the ship is destroyed when all the internal boxes, except the bridge and security, and all excess damage boxes are marked destroyed. So, for example, 3 drones strike the forward shield, and as 3 drones have a total of 18 points of damage, and the shields have 16 points of damage, 2 damage points would penetrate to become internal damage. And the player of that ship scores one of these on the left phaser, and say the other one on one of the hull boxes. Now, later another drone strikes the down forward shield, and the player would have to score 1 damage point on photon torpedo B, 1 on the lab, 1 on the hull box, and let's say 3 on excess damage boxes. This is only one of several possible ways the player could distribute that damage, but remember, they have to hit a weapon. Photon torpedoes are carried by Federation ships, and they're considered to be the heavy weapons of that ship. A Federation ship does not normally keep photon torpedoes armed all the time because of the energy requirements to simply hold them in the tubes and for additional safety reasons. To fire a photon torpedo, each photon box on a Federation ship's SSD represents 1 photon torpedo launch tube, and each tube is kept track of separately. Now on the Cadet cruiser constellation, it has 2 photon torpedo launchers. And photon torpedoes are direct fire weapons that are fired in the direct fire step of the impulse procedure. And whether they hit or miss is determined immediately by a die roll. Note that there's no counters for photon torpedoes. Now, to determine if a photon torpedo has hit the target, you roll a single die, and if the result is between the listed hit numbers inclusive, the torpedo has hit its target. For example, let's say you're firing a photon torpedo at a target 6 hexes away, you roll a 3, you look at the photon torpedo table on the Federation Cadet Cruiser SSD, and a range of 6 is within the 5 to 8 range bracket, so you'll use that column. Under that, you notice that the hit row says 1 to 3, so thus a die roll of 1, 2, or 3 would be a hit, while a die roll of 4, 5, or 6 would be a miss. Now in this case, you hit. Regardless of range, a photon torpedo does 8 points of damage when it hits, and the maximum range of a photon torpedo is 30 hexes. Because of their terrible power, photon torpedoes cannot be fired at a target that is in the same hex as the ship or a hex adjacent to it, and thus they have a minimum range of 2 hexes. Now, photon torpedoes require more time to arm than the phasers, and your chief engineer will reload the torpedoes as fast as they can, but it takes 2 full turns to arm them. And for this reason, you cannot fire the torpedoes on the first turn. You can then fire either or both torpedoes on the second turn, or you can wait until the third or fourth turn if you like. However, when you fire a torpedo, you won't be able to fire another one from the same launcher until the second turn later, rather than on the next turn like a phaser. Now note, for game purposes, the exact point during the turn has no importance. Thus, you could fire torpedo A during the last part of turn 2, and then again during the early part of turn 4. Now, the 2 torpedo boxes are completely independent, and they can be fired at the same time or at different times at the same or different targets. And a single damage point will destroy one tube and leave the other undamaged. So, for example, you fire torpedo A on turn 2, but do not fire torpedo B on that turn. You could then fire torpedo B on turn 3, and let's assume that you do that. Now, you can't fire torpedo A on turn 3 because it was fired on 2, and it takes 2 turns to reload, so you would have to wait till turn 4 to fire torpedo A, and torpedo B would have to wait for turn 5. Now, seeking weapons, unlike direct fire weapons, are represented by counters on the map, and they move towards their target at a given speed. And normally a seeking weapon will hit or miss its targets several impulses or even several turns after it's fired. And the primary characteristic of a seeking weapon is that the target ship has the opportunity to outrun, evade, or fire at the seeking weapon. Now, there are 2 types of seeking weapons. There's drones, which are basically radar homing missiles, and plasma torpedoes, which are charged balls of energy. And this scenario only deals with the drones. Plasma torpedoes, which are much more dangerous, will be introduced later. There's also suicide shuttles, and those basically use the drone rules. Now, seeking weapons move with a fixed speed, which is specified in the scenario, and a turn mode of 1 at all speeds. They home in on their target, moving in each of their impulses towards the target in any manner at the weapon-owning player's option, as long as they move closer to the target if possible. If it's not possible to get closer to the target, then they move in such a way as to get no further away from their target if possible. So let's take an example. The constellation has just entered hex 0808, and there are drones in hex 1109, which are facing E, and 1206, which is facing F. Now, the drone in 1109 could enter 1008 or 1009, as either of those hexes are closer to the ship than the drone currently is. And the drone could, within its turn mode, turn and enter hex 1110. But as this hex is no closer to the ship and a closer hex is available, it's not permitted to enter 1110. And the drone in 1206 could turn right and enter hex 1205, but that's not allowed because the hex would be further from the target. It could also move straight ahead into 1106, but that's not allowed because it is possible for the drone to turn left and enter 1107, which is closer to the target than 1106. Also note that this drone could not enter hexes 1207, 1307, or 1306 because of the turn mode limitations and because these hexes can place them further from the target. Now, in the upcoming scenario, there's no Klingon player to control the drones, so you basically follow the rule that the drone will move directly forward without turning, unless by turning 60 degrees to the right or left it can move into a hex that's closer to the target than the hex that it would enter if it didn't turn. Now, if a seeking weapon and its target are moving on the same impulse, the drone homes in on the hex the target is entering, not the one it's leaving. And if the target enters the weapon's hex, the weapon does not move but strikes the target during the resolved seeking weapons step on the shield that faced the drone when the ship entered the hex. Now, seeking weapons explode when they enter the hex of the target. They're considered to have hit their target at this point. And the effect of this explosion is resolved during the resolve seeking weapons step of that impulse. And you can note this on the impulse chart. Now, as the seeking weapon explodes immediately upon entering the target's hex, the target cannot fire on it at a range of 0. And note that if a seeking weapon targeted on one ship passes through the hex occupied by another ship, the ship being passed could fire at a range of 0, since the weapon did not explode when entering that hex, since it hadn't reached its target. Now, the Klingon ship in this scenario will be able to launch drones, and if the seeking weapon is launched at the same hex as its target, the impulse chart governs the result. Now, since the launch of seeking weapons takes place after seeking weapons move, but before direct fire weapons are fired, the target ship would have the opportunity to fire direct fire weapons at the seeking weapon at a range of 0 before the seeking weapon could hit. Now, which weapons are eligible to fire and which shield is facing the weapon is determined by the relative facing of the ship that fired the weapon. I would probably temporarily back the launching ship up into the hex directly to its rear, then judge the firing arcs from that position. Then you could restore the launching ship to its proper place. Now, if the seeking weapon moves first in a later impulse, it would hit the target unless destroyed, and if the ship moved first, the weapon would follow it. Now, if there's multiple ships in a hex, a designated target ship is damaged by the seeking weapon. And drones can target other drones, and if they impact them, they will destroy them. So let's get on to Scenario 2, Under Attack. Your starship, the Constellation, has been assigned by Starfleet to patrol a given area as a show of force and determination during treaty negotiations in a nearby planet. The Klingons want your ship to leave the area so that the planet will see the Federation as weak and sell their products to the Klingons. But they're not willing to engage directly in combat. So to force you to retreat, they've launched drones into your patrol area. Now, this ship uses the entire map A and B, and the ship cannot leave the map or the Klingons will have succeeded in forcing them to withdraw. You place the ship in hex 0913, facing direction A, and the ship will move at a speed of 8 hexes per turn during the entire scenario. Now, the player can turn the ship as allowed by its turn mode, which is 2 at that speed. And you place the drones as shown here. Now, each drone moves at a speed of 8 hexes per turn, and these are seeking weapons targeted on the ship. If a drone hits the ship, it causes 6 damage points, and each drone is destroyed by 4 damage points. And when a drone is destroyed, obviously you remove it. So the objective of this scenario is to destroy the drones before they can cause internal damage to your ship. If that happens, the planet will be satisfied that the Federation can protect them from the Klingons, and will sign a trade agreement with the Federation. Quickly in review, 10 rules that are either easily overlooked or important. The first is that each ship has 6 shields, and that these correspond with the 6 hex sides. Second, you have to take 1 point on a weapon each time there is internal damage. That is, each attack. Third, drone racks, security boxes, and the bridge don't take hits from internal damage. Fourth, photon torpedoes take 2 turns to rearm. Fifth, photon torpedoes do 8 points of damage. Sixth, photon torpedoes can't be fired at a target in the same or adjacent hexes as the firing unit. 7, seeking weapons follow targets. 8, seeking weapons will always move in such a way that each movement has to bring them closer to the target. 9, seeking weapons explode when they enter the target hex, and during the resolve seeking weapons phase on the impulse chart. Finally, 10, targets can't fire at seeking weapons at a range of 0, though any other ships that the seeking weapons pass through the hex of can fire at a range of 0. I've got my coffee and I've got my game, so I think we're ready to go with this. This is Scenario 2, where we're going to try to wipe out all of these 8 drones here. I've got these guys up, this guy here, and these guys over here, and then these guys over here on the right. And I've got a Federation Cadet cruiser to do that. So let's go ahead and zoom in and get started. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. I think that's a little bit better. And we begin by moving ships. So we're going to move our Federation ship 1. Everybody has a speed of 8. And this is going to be pretty easy this first turn with moving everything. And for all of you folks out there that have watched this from the Starfleet Battles Facebook group, thank you guys very much. You guys have been awesome. I'm really surprised how much attention my video got. So thank you very much. You guys pushed me over 500 subscribers. Ooh. I feel like big stuff now. Mr. Beast better watch out, because I'll be the next PewDiePie. Okay, and that would be your, we're going to go, this is from our impulse procedure chart. So we've moved our ships, and then we moved our seeking weapons. I guess I did those as one. We don't have any seeking weapons to resolve. We're not going to launch anything. And firing direct weapons, I don't think I'm going to do much right now. I think I want my photon torpedoes to be in a range of at least 4 hexes before I do anything. And since these guys are following me, it's going to get, I should be able to get those guys taken care of pretty quickly. So they each take 4 points of damage for the drones. So we'll go ahead and wanted to make sure I got that right. Okay, and that's, I think, all I'm going to do. I don't think there's any other things I can do this turn. So we're going to clear this. And that was Impulse 1. We go to Impulse 2. And I think I'm going to try to pull these guys in a little bit closer. So we'll just keep going up to the top here. And I think this guy I can turn right. Oops, right. There we go. One thing I've never gotten used to on Vassal is turning units. That's always I always get it wrong, particularly when I'm doing it on the video like this. I think one thing too, I've been doing videos for a while now, and I've gotten used to my own voice, but man, I always sound so congested. Maybe I ought to take a Sudafed before I do any of these. Okay, and that should be, I think everybody's moved. The ship's moved. The seeking weapons have all moved. And again, there's no fire. I'm not going to fire anything. So that takes us through Impulse 2. Impulse 3. Let's go ahead and move everybody 1. This guy's going to go here, here, the other thing about this particular scenario is the nebula thing is really cool as a background, but man, it's sometimes hard to see the hex numbers and stuff and everything. So I think if I were playing this, I'd just play this on a plain background. There's 3. Did I get this guy? 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, he's moved. And somehow this guy didn't move. Oh, he's right. Okay, there's that. I think I've moved everybody. That's kind of hard part about playing this solitaire is you forget to move guys, but I guess it doesn't make a huge difference. Okay, that was Impulse 3. Go to Impulse 4. At this point, I think what I'll do is I'm going to turn left, go forward 1, and I'm going to fire a photon torpedo. So let's go ahead and move these guys. This guy moves 1. And this guy, this guy, and this guy, and this guy. But anyway, yeah, to all you guys out there at the Starfleet Facebook group, thank you very much. You guys have been awesome. And since I'm kind of a noob at this, I think that's kind of cool because, like I said, it's a complex system, and this is a really good way to learn it. And there's plenty of people online to reach out to. I've noticed that too. So, and I've got some great comments, people making some corrections and everything. And I mean, they're obviously great to do that. So I really appreciate that. Okay, we've moved ships, we've moved our seeking weapons, we resolved seeking weapons, we've launched seeking weapons, and now we can make a direct fire. And I think I'm going to go ahead and fire my photon torpedo. And I think I'll do my Can I do my right phaser? I think I can. I think this phaser can handle anybody over here, so I think we're in... Let's go ahead and just use the center phaser just to make sure we're doing this right. That's one thing I had a little bit of problem with the last one, was making sure the fields, I guess, phaser LF, so yeah, it'll cover that guy. I think, yeah, it'll cover that guy. So we'll do this one here. I realize these are also hits. I'm showing hits on here instead of let's do this. Show data, and we will say in turn 1 impulse, we're at impulse 3. We'll say photon is going to go with... Oh, I can't. That's right. I can't fire these photons until turn 2 because of the way. That's right. That was in the rules. So we'll just say phaser. I guess we'll say phaser 1 or phaser. Yeah, phaser 1. And phaser 1 is going to fire during impulse 3. And yeah, I can't fire a photon torpedo until turn 2 because of the reload rules. Okay, so phaser has a 1, 2, a 3 range. We roll a 1, which that'll take this guy out. Okay, so we delete him, and that's resolving our direct fire weapons, and we have an end of impulse. Let me put phaser 2 and phaser 3. And maybe I still think I'm missing something here with Vassal, that there's a way to show just on this sheet somehow that you've used the phasers, other than what I'm just did. So, okay, that turn, we go to turn impulse 4. I guess, yeah, that was impulse 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 is done, so we go to impulse 5. And we're going to go forward. Whoops. And this guy will go left. Oops, right. There, I did it again. And we'll go right. And right. And right. And right. Or forward. Let's go right to this guy and forward. He's just going to have to creep along those hexes and forward. And that's, I think, everybody. They've all made their moves. Yeah. Okay, I think that's it. We have, that would be the end. So we're at end of impulse. We go to impulse 6. And this one we're going to turn left. Oops, clear this. Oops. And forward. And yeah, we went ahead we made at least 2 hexes, so we can turn. We'll go forward, 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 and forward. Okay, now that's our moving our ships. We've moved our seeking weapons, resolve seeking weapons. We don't have to do anything. Launching seeking weapons, we don't have to do. So fire direct weapons. At this point, I think I will go ahead and I will fire phasers 2 and 3 and see if I can take these guys out. And then hopefully I can get away from this guy up here. Okay, so we're firing phaser 2 and 3 during impulse 6. Let's put our little data thing. And then I can fire early in the next turn by doing that. So, okay, let's roll it. This guy's going to be 1, 2, 3 hexes away. We roll a 5 at 3 hexes, and that's a 4. So we can get rid of this guy. And then this guy's 1, 2, 3 hexes away. And I roll a 3. And that's a 4. So this guy's still deleted. Okay, we resolve direct fire. We end our impulse. We go to impulse 7. I have to go forward. Let's see, I'm at turn mode of, I'm moving at 8. So I've got to turn at 2. So I have to make 2 stops before I can turn again. So we're going to go forward. We'll go forward. 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 And forward. And tell me more about, if you guys play this a lot, tell me more about it. Like I say, let me know what you think I need to go from, where I need to go from this when I finish up this series. Do you want to see more playthroughs? If that's the case, I could probably do that. Like I say, I really enjoy this game. Which, again, like I always say, is I'm not a Star Trek fan, and yet this is really pretty cool. Okay, and that was 8. I think that was 8. So we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, now we go into 8. And this time I can turn. And I'm going to go left. Whoops. Actually, I'm not. I'm going to go... let's go forward 1. And we'll go forward here. Forward here. Forward here. Forward here. Forward here. And that's it. Okay. And that is the end of the turn. So I'm going to change my label to turn 2. Again, that's kind of hard to see up here. Let's just, you can kind of see it up there. We'll clear this. And at this point, I could either take the damage, I could turn. Okay, we have another issue, is that the photon torpedo is too close. So in the next turn, we're going to move this here, and we can't fire that photon torpedo that closely. So what we're going to have to do is, let's go forward 1. And this guy will go forward. 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 That guy should have probably gone into this hex. It's okay. We'll be fine. Okay, now we want that phaser over here. I guess it's phaser 3. We want to fire. We can fire because we're in a new turn. And we didn't fire late in the turn at 7 and 8, so we can fire that. Let's do our little show data sheet. And that's going to be phaser 3. And that was during impulse 1. We fired. And we're going to roll for phaser 3. Should be a pretty easy one. 3. Okay, yeah. I mean, any hit would have done it. Okay, but the downside is I lost a phaser for the rest of the turn. So we'll delete that guy. And that was impulse 1. Okay, now we can go to impulse 2. I'm going to turn right and go forward 1. Forward. Forward? Yeah. Oh, they both went. That's interesting. I guess this guy can go right and forward. I guess we can stack those. 4. Okay. And that was impulse number 2. Again, nothing that we don't want to fire that far away. We go to impulse 3. I've got to go 1 more because of my speed, and then I can turn. This guy will go right and forward. This guy will go forward. I guess that's 2 guys. And this guy will go forward. And again, that ends impulse 4. I can turn now and forward. This guy goes forward. These two forward. And these two forward. So we've moved. Now let's go through our impulse. We've moved our ships. We've moved our seeking weapons. Now we resolve seeking weapons. We don't have to. Launch seeking weapons. We don't. Now we can fire direct fire weapons. And that would include the photon torpedo. Let's go ahead and launch a photon torpedo. And that's going to go against this drone 5. So drone 5 is 1, 2, 3 hexes away. And we're going to just go ahead and roll. And we get a 3. So 3 hexes. So that's within the 1 to 4 range and does 8 points damage. So that easily destroys him. And we need to say that we've shot off a photon torpedo. I guess that's A. We'll just say that was during turn 2, impulse 5. Okay. Fire direct. Everybody's a little too far for direct fire. I don't think I want to waste my other phaser. So we go to the next impulse. There's 2 guys here. I keep remembering. Got to remember that. And that's that impulse. Okay, moving. We've moved everybody. Let's clear that. And I think I will go ahead and fire. Let's see what I've got left. I've got 3 guys left. And I've fired, I still have a photon torpedo, I think the middle phaser and the left phaser. So that would be the 3. I'm going to go ahead and fire the photon torpedo. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think I'll do that because it's going to get pretty close. Let's see, I put next turn, I get here. This guy gets here. Let's wait a turn. We're going to wait a turn. And we go to impulse 6. Not a turn, an impulse. That's the thing, I do mess up on this. Okay. So we're going to go to next impulse. We're going to move ships. And he turns right. Oops, left. And goes forward 1. He turns left and goes forward 1, and he goes forward. Okay, let's make this exciting. I'm going to fire a photon torpedo at drone 6. At drone 7, I'm going to fire a phaser, the left phaser, and then I'm going to fire my middle phaser at drone 8. So let's see how this goes. Let's start with the photon torpedo. And we're at a range of 1, 2. We roll a 1. Oh, easy. Okay, so that makes it and gets the 8 points of damage. So that's going to get rid of this guy. Okay, then we have a phaser at range 2. Let's see, range 2. We roll a 4. That's 4 points. That's enough there. And then I've got 1, 2, 3 hexes away, and I'm doing another phaser. I roll a 6 at 3 hexes, so that's 3 points of damage. So this guy has 1 point of damage. So we have a little bit of a problem. Tell you what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just take the hit because I can. I'll take no internal damage. Okay, we go to turn impulse 6, and we go forward, and this guy goes. He's going to have to turn right, see, because he's going to have to try to intercept there. And then turn 7. I could try to outrun the guy, but I'll just go ahead and do this. And just to show you guys what a hit does, he moves forward, and because it's going to be in this, it's going to be shield 2. You can see this hex side would be shield 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then that takes 6 points of damage on shield 2. However, it also destroys the drone and the explosion. And that is it. This is not a terribly hard little scenario, but it does kind of show you some of the, gets you into the whole pattern of the game. I think that's a good thing. Anyway, that's what I've got this week. I'm going to keep these pretty short, so we'll be back with scenario 3 next week. And if you have any suggestions, ideas, things you saw here that I could have done differently, let me know. And we'll see you then. Thanks a lot. Bye.